Alright guys, about a week ago I picked this little Herman lock. It's a copy of the multi-lock C-series, I think. Surprisingly, this one did not have pin and pin. Got it picked pretty quickly, I guess, easily within 5 minutes. But what interested me, though, is a lot of you guys came up with a question about, hey, why don't you impression it? So I thought, we haven't done that for a while, so why don't we give it a shot? I haven't pulled this kit out in probably at least 2 years, maybe more than that. This is a impression kit I got off of Bangood, several years ago. So don't even bother asking me for the link because I don't remember. But you just look for impressioning tools or locksmithing impressioning, and usually these kind of things will pop up. Maybe not this exact kit. I think I paid about $70. So the hardest part about using these kits is that they're obviously made in China. They don't come with any instructions. And then mine came with a CD that I had to watch like 50 times to figure out what in the world the guy was doing. So I'm going to show you a couple little tips and tricks. One thing, that it does come with a bunch of foil. Again, I had to watch the video to figure this out. A bunch of foil behind the foam cover, and I've learned to ignore that. And I'll show you why in just a minute. So let's figure out if this is even going to be a video. As I said, the hardest part is finding an insert that will fit into the profile that you have. And all of my inserts are right here, and I've got about 10 or 12 of them as I recall. And they're all different sizes, they're all different shapes. Some of them fit multi-locks, and I'm hoping one of the multi-lock profiles will fit it. So you have the standard C shape for those little smiley locks, and here's a couple other ones. So let's just start trying it. What you're hoping for, see, that was too small, I can tell already, so we'll set him aside. Let's try his big brother. What you're hoping for is a profile that looks about right. Now, the thing you need to keep in mind is, even though it's one profile, there's actually two ends. One is a mirror of the other side, so don't give up on the first try. Just try to slide that dude in there. If it doesn't work, flip it around and try the other side. Both right side up and upside down. No luck. Don't think that's going to work. I can tell by looking at him. That was a smiley. All right, let's try this guy. He looks close, like there. Very close, but I don't think he's quite right. Nope, not quite right. A little too big. Let's try that one. So that would be that side. There we go. So we do have a profile that seems to fit. It's not perfect, but it's got enough room in there, enough slack to where we can put foil and a spacer in there. So let me go ahead and hook this up. First thing I want to do is put a handle on it. In my kit, I've got 3 different handles, so that could be 10 minutes just figuring that out. So let me find a handle, get the spacer put in there, and then we'll go to the next step. All right, we got that in there. Got it aligned correctly so I can do that jiggling motion. Next thing we want to do is, this is the slot where all the pins fit down inside of. So what I want to do is, before I start putting a piece of impressioning foil, I want to put a spacer in there. And again, you've got a wide selection of spacers here. You've got these really huge ones, and I can tell you right away, I've never used one of these. What you want to do is insert a spacer from the back so that when you look at it from the side, it doesn't protrude above the top of it. You can see this thing is way, way too big. It'll never go into the keyway. You want to find one of the spacers that is flush with the top of the key once you get it installed. So let me pick through those and figure that out. All right, it's important to take the time up front to get your jig right. You saw me futzing around with that, and that's because I chose the wrong one to begin with. I didn't have my adapter in there quite right, so it wasn't clamping, but now I've got the right size. As you see, it right across the top there, it's perfectly flush with the top of that. Should go in the keyway, and this is really a good time to check, just to make sure it's still going to fit with that spacer. If it doesn't, you want to know now before you start investing time in your foils. Notice I left the tip of that just a little bit past the end of this, and that's because I'm going to fold the foil over the edge of it, and I'll use the razor to trim it off. So I'm basically ready to go here. Make sure your nuts are tight. That didn't sound right. Okay, take your foil. Now, as I said, you get a lot of foil with this. They give you tons of foil, but you need hours to get that stuff shaped right. There's a lot of different tools in here designed just for putting that foil and getting it fitted. And that's really the hardest part of this whole thing. Instead, I recommend you go to GoSo. And they sell these little canisters. They're about $5, and there's 100 preformed pieces of foil in there. This will save you days of labor. And I just throw them in the bottom of the kit, keep them right here. Just grab one of these guys. Now, when you look at these, they've got cuts on them. They got about 6 cuts on one end or 7 cuts, and then the blank side. You want the cuts towards the tip because ideally, when you get this spaced in there, the pins will fit in between those cuts, and those cuts are just going to make it a little bit easier for the pins to collapse the foil when it starts to do the impressioning thing. All right, get that kind of lined up. I want it a little bit past, just a little bit past the edge. Arg. All right. I don't want to squish him. That's what you're trying to avoid here. Come on, get up there. Well, it's usually not this hard. All right, so line them up. And then what I usually do, leave it a little bit past the tip, and we're going to roll them over in a minute. And then take this tool. Now, this is usually what you use for making those foils. There's how you get your cuts spaced correctly. On the other side is the compression tool. So kind of just slide it on there and push down. And what that will do is it'll force the edges of that foil into the cuts. There's tiny little cuts in the key. And it'll put them in there, and it should hold them in there pretty good. Now, another little tip on this tool, squirt a little WD-40 or Houdini or something in there so it doesn't stick to the foil. It definitely will do that. All right, once I get everything kind of compressed in there, I just take my thumb and compress it right over the top of that edge, and then get a razor blade, which I keep in the kit, and cut all of that excess off. And that way we know it'll fit right into that keyway. If you feel the foil moving around, don't hesitate to push down with your thumb. You've got that support under it right now. You're not going to screw it up, but you definitely don't want that foil floating back and forth when you slide this in the keyway. All right, let's go to the lock and see what we can make happen with this thing. All right, guys, the moment of truth. All right, before I start shoving this unlubricated shaft into that tight keyway, go ahead and take a drop of oil. It doesn't matter what it is. Any kind of lubricant, smear it along the top of your foil. So when you slide it in there, those pins don't seize up against the foil and then shove it back towards the handle. It'll just literally strip it back like peeling back a banana. So little lube will prevent that. All right, I'm also going to take my right thumb and hold my foil so that when I slide it in there, again, with that drag, I don't want it to push that foil back. I have to have that foil against every single one of the pins. So just hold on to it, prevent it from slipping, and just work it in there gently. Hopefully. There we go. And I believe that inserted successfully all the way. All right, my foil did not slip, and you can watch that gap. So make sure your gap is the same when you end up as when you started. At that point, take your little tool, undo this about a quarter of a turn, and then pull out the support pin. Don't pull out the entire thing. I mean the whole keyway, obviously. And now your foil is unsupported. Tighten this dude back up and put a little extra torque on it this time because you're going to be putting some leverage on this guy. All right, at that point, it's just a matter of impressioning. The hard part now is done, and that's getting the foil fully inserted. At that point, just start rotating it back and forth, allowing those pins to mash down on that unsupported foil and impression itself. And depending on how deep the keys are cut, this could take a while. In other words, 3 or 4 minutes. And I didn't look at the pinning of this to see, but hopefully it doesn't take that long. You'll notice that the swing is getting wider and wider as more of the pins have reached the shear line and have impressioned. And there we go. Complete rotation, and we have an open. Now, a lot of guys have said when you pull this out, you can somehow decode it. I haven't been very successful at doing that. Sometimes it mashes that foil. See, it's there. That one seemed to work not too bad. Let me find one of the original keys. Now you can kind of see it worked pretty well. Obviously had to work well enough to get an open, but I don't think you could really take your impressioning foil and decode it. If you're trying to hand cut a key, like a normal pin tumbler, it would give you an idea of where the starting points might be, but I don't think it'll give you the exact code. Just out of curiosity, let's see if we can stick it back in there and see if it will still work. Oh, no, my foil collapsed. Oh, well. It was worth a shot. Anyway, guys, there you go. The impressioning tools. You guys have seen it a couple times in the past. Hopefully that gives you an idea how to use these things without having to suffer through that miserable training video they send you with it. Appreciate your time, guys. Stay safe, stay legal, stay healthy. Thanks, guys.